Good evening. You hear me fine? Okay. Welcome to our 2022 spring event, Arts in Action. The Garden State region is a dedicated group of women who understand the importance of bringing you all together with interesting program is a major part of our playbook. Originally, we wanted to continue with our very successful Women of Achievement dinner, which has been held at the affiliates of Springfield, Marlborough, and Livingston. But as you know, in-person events have entered a new abnormal. So tonight, can you join us without a ride up the Parkway or even at the expense and time involved to trek to Broadway? You can enjoy our entire playbill tonight. You can chat in our breakout rooms that begin at 7 p.m.-ish. And at 7:45 p.m., we will have a presentation by our dynamic speaker, Dr. Susan Spidell. The curtain goes down at 9:15 p.m. after a Q&A with Dr. Spidell, and please stay on to the end for my closing remarks. This evening is all from the comfort of your home, a very special event shared with your sisters in the Garden State region and beyond. Our program is free. However, if you are not a sisterhood or independent member, please consider making a donation to the Garden State region. I will put the info in the chat. We are growing our scholarship fund and appreciate your support for our program to enable delegates to attend our upcoming convention next summer in Schaumburg, Illinois. I would personally like to thank you to our Arts and Action Committee led by Helene Nee, with team members of Eileen Rothman, Teresa Samter, Susan Winter, and Sheila Kaufman. We've worked very well together. We have attracted over 100 women in our registration. So we join us for our unique version of a spring conference. There are so many people tonight that I want to welcome. There are 5 of my fellow region presidents. I will announce them and Sheila will spotlight them. Barbara Kaplan from Brooklyn, Queens, Long Island, BQLI. There is Jeanette Bronstein, region president from Florida. Hi, Jeanette. There's, I think she's here, I'm not sure, Marjorie Furman from Baltimore Seaboard region. I'm not sure that one, if she's here. Marjorie. Okay. Carol Madvik from Arizona, part of region president, Pacific Southwest. Carol. And another one, I'm not sure she's here, but I just wanted to mention, there she is, okay. There's Marcia. Gloria Adelston from Charleston, South Carolina. She was actually in 2005 a consultant for a spring conference that took place at my home synagogue in Highland Park for that conference in 2005. We have other people here. We welcome BQLI Grace Schessler. She's the International VP, also author of Program Ideas of the Week. We have Deborah Bruce. She's our Garden State advisor.
Not on.
Okay, from Massachusetts. And we have attendees from California, Florida, Iowa, Illinois, Maryland, and New York. Welcome. Okay, after the greetings, first by our executive director, Rabbi Ellen Wolintz Fields. We'll have greetings from Debbie Kainer Goldish, our international president, and our DeBarge tonight will be by our Women's League Conservative Judaism educator, Rabbi Margie Sella. You will be sent to a breakout room. Thank you for registering for a specific room, and due to technical difficulties, hopefully you have a good memory for what you register for. We are going to open it up that there will be 3 rooms. And just in a nutshell, room 1 is music, contemporary music in Israel with Ilana Rosette. Beautiful music and explanation of reference to biblical text. The room number 2 is programming and social actions in the arts. That will be conducted by Terry Fields, from an art teacher and Torah Fund BP from BQLI. Very interesting program. The last program will be done by Helene Nee, our program co-chair, on Theater Talks. They were all fairly well received and equally. So, wherever you go, you won't go wrong. So, please make that selection of 1 music, 2 arts, 3 theater after Rabbi Sella speaks. I would like now to introduce Rabbi Ellen Wellensfield to give a benediction for tonight.
Erev Tov to everybody. I wasn't totally positive if I would be here this evening for 2 reasons. One, we're moving our offices in Manhattan and we're busy packing, so I wasn't sure when the train would get in. And my son's graduated from the Hebrew Academy of New Jersey, and if it rained last night, it was going to be tonight, but thank God it didn't rain last night, so he graduated already. I got home in time. I'm able to be here, which is truly an honor since I'm a member of the Garden State region, and it's good to see members of my own sisterhood here from Congregation Torah El. So Janet and Susan, and I don't know if there were others on, but when I was looking at everybody, that's who is here. So good to see you. So a little take on a prayer that's not hard to write an invocation this week because the prayer is right in the Torah reading. But you'll see it's not the typical priestly blessing. It's a little bit of a difference in it. So to my sisters in the Garden State region, Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, may God bless you and guard you. We pray to God that our sisters in the Garden State region always have good health, happiness, joy, love, and blessings. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God show you favor and be gracious to you. We ask Adonai to bestow favor to our sisters as we live the Jewish value of being created b'tselem Elohim, in God's holy image, as each person behaves in a holy manner, exemplifying that God is in each and every one of us, and God is present in everyone that we interact with. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God show you all kindness and grant you peace. We ask Adonai to bestow the strength and courage to each member of our region to have the ability to show kindness to ourselves in the parameter of humility, anava, knowing our worth and realizing that anava is not only being modest, but also not being arrogant. Ribono Shel Olam, we pray that all of our sisters will take the advice to be kind to ourselves each day and always be kind to others and never bring others down in order to bring ourselves up. And then we will truly be able to live in peace. Shalom. Ken Yehi Ratzon, so may it be. And let us all say, Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi. Our next speaker, greetings from Debbie Hayner-Goldich, our international president. Debbie.
Thank you. Thank you, Lynette. Shalom, friends. It always gives me great pleasure to spend quality time with my Garden State region sisters. Some of my favorite people live in New Jersey. I want to update you on a few items. First, on Monday, June 15th, as Rabbi just said, Women's League is moving our international office from the Upper West Side of New York City to downtown near 37th Street and 8th Avenue. We look forward to sharing space with 6 other Jewish organizations and being very close to Penn Station and many kosher restaurants. You can find our new address and telephone number in the Women's League Week newsletter. And I do want to say that our number is the same, but the area code is different. So pay attention, take note of that in Women's League Week. Speaking of Women's League Week, if you do not receive it, please put your name and email in the chat and I will subscribe you. The newsletter is filled with opportunities for learning and engagement. The international programs are all free of charge to all members and individual members, and the programs listed from Sisterhood affiliates all over North America are available to you also. Some have a charge, but most are free because you are a member of Women's League and your Sisterhood affiliate. We are planning an in-person convention, July 16th through 19, 2023, a year from next month in Schaumburg, Illinois. And we hope you will plan to join us. We will be paying a great deal of attention to the health and safety at convention. So that is something that you do not have to worry about. Lastly, I want to share with you that next Wednesday night at 8:15 East Coast time, we are holding an open meeting for all members of Women's Leagues and Sisterhood affiliates. The purpose of the meeting is to vote to approve the updated international bylaws. These bylaws have not been updated since 2005. Please read the updated bylaws, which are on Women's League Week, and come into the Zoom to vote. You must register to attend that meeting. The meeting will not be long, and we need a quorum of members from all regions. So take advantage of your membership and make a difference in Women's League by casting your vote on Wednesday night to approve the new updated bylaws. Each vote counts. Thank you for inviting me tonight to spend a few minutes with updates. And I want to congratulate Lynette Cedar on a great year as region president. I wish your administration continued success, and I look forward to being together, biyachad, with you again next year.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. Our Devar Torah tonight is from Rabbi Margie Seller, our Women's League educator. Rabbi Margie.
Okay. Thank you, Lynette. Thank you for inviting me to offer a few words of Torah to you this evening to get your program started off. I was thinking about trying to think about what I could possibly come up with that would tie in some way with your theme for this evening. And I ended up settling on the Haftarah for this week, which comes from the 12th chapter of the book of Judges. Now, the book of Judges is one of those books, if you have not studied it, I invite you to do so. It has a lot of stories in it that you probably never learned about in Hebrew school, that's for sure. But this particular chapter could almost, if we read through it, the whole story could almost be a great musical comedy on Broadway. There are two main characters in the story. The wife in the story would be the protagonist, and the husband in the story, whose name is Manoah, would provide the comic relief if you read through the story. So we read in this chapter that the wife is barren. She's unable to have children, and so she receives a visit from an angel. She's not quite sure it's an angel. She thinks it is, but in any event, the angel comes and tells her that he says to her, look, you're barren. You aren't able to have any children. And so guess what? God's gonna bless you with a son. So first of all, just the way the angel says it to her, it reads like she doesn't know that she's barren. He's got to say this to her. But so he tells her she's going to have a child, and she's alone when this happens. And he also gives her instructions on how she should raise this child. During her pregnancy, she is to refrain from all kinds of wine and alcohol and all kinds of intoxicants. And when the child is born, he is not going to be allowed to cut his hair. He is going to be a Nazirite from birth, which ties into the Torah portion for this week. So after the angelic visitor leaves, she goes and she tells her husband, Manoah, that she had this visit, and this is what this guy said. And Manoah goes and entreats God and says, God, could you please send this guy back again to us? Well, the angel didn't come to us in the first place. The angel came to her, and God answers the prayer by sending the angel back to her. And she goes and she tells her husband, the angel is here again. And he goes and he asks the angel to repeat everything the angel had said to the woman. What should we do with this child when he is born? And basically the angel says, look, this is everything I told her to do, and this is what she should do. So then Manoah wants to offer have a sacrificial meal. The angel says, no, if you do that, I'm not going to eat. You should offer it to God instead. And Manoah asked the angel his name, even though the woman had said previously that she thought this guy was an angel and he didn't give his name. Manoah asks his name. He says, you can't ask me that. And when he offers a sacrifice, the angel goes up to heaven. Then they realize that this really was an angel. And then Manoah says to his wife, oh no, we've seen a heavenly being and we're going to die. And she says to him, no, that's ridiculous, because if God wanted to kill us, why would this whole thing have happened? Why would God have told us that we're going to have a son? Why would any of this have happened if we were going to die? It doesn't make sense. So indeed, she is visited, she conceives, she has a son, and the son's name is Samson. But in this story, who comes out looking like the good guy? The wife. Who comes out looking like the fool? Manoah, the husband. So the wife here is one of a long series of women that this motif of the barren woman in the Bible. Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel were all barren women. Sarah received a visit from angels also, but only because her husband had already been told she was going to have a child. And Rebecca, Isaac interceded for her before God that she would conceive and have a child. And Rachel, when she couldn't conceive, she complained to Jacob, and Jacob's answer was, am I God? What can I do about this? What do you want from me, basically? And then we get to this story. And in this story, the woman is the one who was visited by the angel. The woman is the one who was told she's going to have a child. And the one that's left out of the action, so to speak, is the husband. So it's a great step forward, except for one thing. Except for one thing. If I asked you what this woman's name was, did I ever mention her name? No, because she's not named in the story. She's one of a long line of women in the Bible who are important, but not important enough to be named. And so this is how I tie this in with your theme for this evening. The woman is the person who receives the announcement, not her husband. And he is made out to look like a fool. She's come a long way, except for the fact that she does not have a name. So like the Jewish women of the theater who are making a name for themselves beyond Golda and Yenta, we, all of us, must strive to make our names known, to insert our names into the story. As rabbis, cantors, teachers, artists, writers, musicians, etc., whatever your life's calling is, together we are making a place for our names in Jewish history. And I urge you all to add your name to the story.
Nice.
Thank you, Yashikawa. Okay, we are now going to proceed to, you will see on the screen your options for breakout rooms, and please select accordingly. Breakout number 1 is music with Alana Asset. Breakout 2 is arts, social action projects with Terry Fields. And breakout 3, Helene Nee is conducting theater talk. Everybody, okay, I'm going to leave this up to our Sheila to put the breakout room selection. Please bear with us. This is a first time.
Okay.
Everyone back from the breakout rooms?
Yep, we're looking for Helene.
I saw those dots. There she is.
There she is.
Hi, we'll continue our program. Helene Nee will have a few words before our main speaker.
Okay. I am honored and privileged to present Dr. Susan Speidel, who is a performer director, producer, administrator, and educator. I became acquainted with Dr. Spidell through the Rutgers Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, or otherwise known as OLLIRU, where she has taught many musical theater and acting classes. Dr. Spidell is currently on the Theater Conservatory faculty at Kean University. She served as the director of education at the Paper Mill Playhouse, where she oversaw the Rising Star Musical Theater Awards, the Summer Musical Theater Training Program, and the Adopt a School Project. These programs were cited for excellence by the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. Susan Spidell has appeared in Off-Broadway in Olio, a modern vaudeville, and in Jesus Christ Superstar and the Student Prince at the Paper Mill Playhouse, one of those regional theaters we mentioned, where she has also appeared in numerous concert events. She has played leading roles in productions at the George Street Playhouse, the Forum Theater, the Light Opera of New Jersey, Surflight Theater, Foundation Theater, Chatham Playhouse, and Plays in the Park in Edison, New Jersey, most recently playing the title role in Hello, Dolly for Capitol Productions. She studied acting and directing at the HB Studios in New York City and the Globe Theater in London, and also holds a BA in English and Theater from Montclair State, an MA in Arts Administration from NYU, an MA in Liberal Studies from Kean University. She earned her doctorate in Liberal Studies at Drew University. Her dissertation topic was Elements of the Greek Choral Structure in the Musicals of Stephen Sondheim, as influenced by Rodgers and Hammerstein's Allegro. She is a 3-time Perry Award nominee and was nominated for 2 Broadway World Awards. She's the recipient of numerous MSU Theater Night Awards, and that's the community theaters, the New Jersey Governor's Award for Theater Education, and the New Jersey Association, Community Theater Hall of Fame for her contribution to theater and arts education. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Susan Spidell for her world premiere presentation, Beyond Golda and Yenta, Jewish Women on Stage.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Helene. It's lovely to be with you all this evening. Thank you for inviting me, and a special thank you to Helene for bringing us all together. I'm a little exhausted after that introduction. Sometimes I'm a little overwhelmed, but thank you for that. That was a lovely introduction.
I had to pare it down, as you know.
Well, I mentioned this in an email to Helene the other day. I'm a big believer that one picture is indeed worth 1,000 words. And so to accompany my presentation this evening, and especially on a Zoom format, I've gathered a number of videos and images, pictures of many of the women that we're going to talk about. So with your indulgence, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get this going here. There we go. Okay. Give me 1 second to just get this aligned. Okay, there we are. So, as I prepared for this evening and in the conversations that I've had with Helene over the past few months about this talk, I thought a lot about the presentation's title, Beyond Golda and Yenta, or Beyond Golda and Yenta, Jewish Women on Stage and Off Stage, being the part that's implied. It is an apt place to start because Golda and Yenta are perhaps 2 of the best known female Jewish characters in contemporary theater. They are richly drawn, complex women who are mothers, wives, and members of their community. Because of the popularity of Fiddler on the Roof, they occupy an important place not only in Jewish culture, but in American theatrical culture as well. And I would suggest that they own a place in world culture in addition. I had the experience when I was in Budapest a number of years ago of walking down the street and seeing an advertisement for a production of Fiddler on the Roof. And I know that it's also been produced in Japan. So it is a very universal story. And these are kind of universal archetypes. And we'll talk about that as we move forward. But it is the word beyond that I want to focus on most. For as we look beyond these 2 well-known characters, it soon becomes apparent that there is indeed much to consider. All of the women that we will encounter this evening like those in this montage that we will not talk about this evening because we simply would not have time, have challenged traditional notions of Jewish female identity in mass culture and mass media. Over the course of the last 150 years, the women we will discuss have created new possibilities for themselves by rejecting the polarization of Jewish women as either the overbearing mother or the exotic temptress. They have confronted negative stereotypes in order to ultimately dismantle them. We will talk about those two archetypes of the Jewish mother and the temptress because that will appear throughout the conversation this evening. And by examining them, we'll also realize how American theater has evolved in terms of depicting Jewish women on stage, and how the role of Jewish women off stage has also evolved. If Yenta and Golda represent the mothers of the old world, then the Jewish mothers of the new world are a new creation. And in fact, the image of the Jewish mother was shaped, or perhaps stretched is a more appropriate word, by the sentimentality of Yiddish theater, the humor of Borscht Belt comedians, and the prejudices of American society. The result was the image of a plump lady in sensible shoes, wearing a full-length fur coat, carrying shopping bags stuffed with snacks for her children, personified here by Maureen Stapleton in the movie version of the musical Bye Bye Birdie. The opposite image, that of the exotic temptress, is sometimes referred to as the Belle Juive, or the beautiful Jewess. This image of a young, beautiful woman with the ability to charm her oppressors or her opposers was widely written about in the 18th and 19th century, and also dates back to the biblical figure of Salome and perhaps even the character of Jessica, Shylock's daughter, in The Merchant of Venice. It can also be seen in contemporary media in some elements of the title character in the streaming series The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. One theatrical work that helped create this temptress image on stage was the play Deborah, written by German writer Solomon Hermann Mosenthal in 1849. So we're going back over almost 200 years, in fact, to look at the origin of this on stage. Deborah tells the story of a Jewish refugee who is forbidden to pass the night in an Austrian town, but who finds shelter and eventually love with a Christian citizen of the town. When another member of the town accuses her of a crime, he becomes her most vocal critic and turns against her. Her lover becomes her most vocal critic. And she is faced with the choice of converting or being banished from the town. And she nobly sacrifices herself for the sake of her lover. Clara Ziegler, seen here on the left, originated the role of Deborah in numerous productions of the play in Europe. Kate Bateman, center, played the role in New York City in a translation by Augustine Daly, which was given the new title of Leia the Forsaken. A silent film version of Leia the Forsaken was released in 1908 with Victoria Prescott in the role. Now, this play was important because it was really one of the first times that a depiction of a Jewish woman on stage was widely accepted, not only produced in Europe, but in New York and as a film as well. It really speaks to the study of representation of Jewishness on stage as a jumping off place, as a beginning. 42 or more years after it was written, Sarah Bernhardt played the role in Paris. Given her exotic reputation, both on stage and off, it is perhaps not surprising that the great Bernhardt would have been drawn to this character. Born in 1844, Bernhardt was perhaps the world's first true superstar. She created a carefully constructed personality and public image, often allowing her stage roles to reflect her personal life. Now, little is known of Bernhardt's early life, though it is clear that both her grandmother and mother were Jewish and of either Dutch or German descent. Bernhardt had an unhappy childhood, and it is speculated that her mother encouraged her to become a prostitute. She was sent to a convent for several years to be educated, and that had a great influence on her. And at age 12, at the insistence of her father, or the man who was thought to be her father, she converted to Catholicism. However, throughout her entire life, when questioned about her religion and her faith and her race, she would always say, "I am a daughter of the great Jewish race." Beginning with the role of Salome, she often cast herself as the Belle Juive, and by matching the celebrity status of an emancipated and successful actress to this image, Bernhardt steered the stereotype in a new direction, transforming it into a much more modern woman who owned her sexuality, sacrificed nothing, and derived power from her independence. Certainly, the power of a celebrity to shape popular taste and influence behavior cannot be ignored, and it is nothing new. It was true of Bernhardt, and it is true today of the Kardashians, and also was true of one of the most famous first American superstars, Anna Held. Held made her stage debut in London Yiddish theater, and later gained fame singing in Paris cafes. This early success so enamored her of the French that she would often claim she was French, though she had been born, in fact, to a Jewish family living in Poland. It was in Paris that Held was discovered by Florenz Ziegfeld, and she would go on to become one of his greatest stars and his first wife. Held was considered one of the most beautiful women in the world, and between 1896 and 1910, she appeared in a succession of musicals as a charming, coquettish Parisian singer and comedienne with an hourglass figure. She also developed an offstage reputation for exotic behavior, much like Bernhardt, and that behavior included things such as bathing in 40 gallons of milk every day to maintain her complexion. Now, her detractors implied that her fame owed more to Ziegfeld's ability and promotional flair than to any real talent, but her allure was undeniable. Her beauty and uninhibited style also inspired Ziegfeld to create his long-running series of popular revues, the Ziegfeld Follies, that celebrated beautiful women and influenced fashion and the American perception of beauty for generations. Another of Ziegfeld's great talents as an impresario was the ability to spot talent, and he introduced or included many great stars in his follies, from Bert Williams to Will Rogers, and from Nora Bayes to Josephine Baker. But unique among these performers was, of course, Fanny Brice. Ziegfeld's presentation of a self-proclaimed ugly duckling, whose performances ranged from slapstick comedy to searing torch songs, changed forever the way Jewish women were perceived on the New York stage. Born in Manhattan in 1891 to Russian Jewish immigrants, Brice was a singer, comic, actress, recording artist, and radio personality. At the age of 17, she left school to work in a burlesque revue, and just 2 short years later began her association with Ziegfeld, headlining his 1910 Follies. She would continue to appear in the Follies until the final edition in 1931. And in 1921, the Follies featured her singing the torch song My Man, which of course would become her signature song. In almost all of her performances, Brice offered a commentary on the various roles of Jewish women in society, and she often performed material that spoke to the daily experiences Jewish women encountered in American life at the beginning of the 20th century. And now we're going to listen to a snippet, a short bit, of the Song of the Sewing Machine, which was a song that Bryce had commissioned to write about her own mother's experience working in the garment district.
When I was young, a song was sung of a land that was milk and honey, where people were rolling in money, far over the billowy sea. And so one day I sailed away with a heart that was light and sunny. I came to the land of the free. I ask you, is this liberty? There is no sun, there is no moon, there is no May, there is no June. If you listen to the song of the sewing machine, the babbling brook, the summertime is just a lazy poet rhyme. If you listen to the song of the sewing machine. Oh, through
And I'm going to stop it there in the interest of time. But it's clear that Bryce had a connection to the Jewish immigrant experience in New York City, especially, and understood that her audience also had that same experience. And so she frequently connected into that experience. In addition, Bryce was also the creator, producer, and star of the Baby Snooks radio show, and as such, was an influential figure in the emerging broadcast industry. Today, of course, performers such as Bette Midler and Fran Drescher have pointed to Bryce as an influence. And Mexican comedian Maria Elena Saldana created a character quite similar to Baby Snooks, which was extremely popular in Latin entertainment and Latin mass media in the 1980s. And of course, her story was brought to life in Funny Girl, originally by Barbra Streisand in the first Broadway production in the 1960s and the subsequent film, and now by Beanie Feldstein in the current Broadway production. While Anna Held and Fanny Bryce pointed to ways that Jewish women could find identity in American culture, while also showing an affinity for the immigrant experience, the Yiddish theater, which existed just a few blocks south of the Ziegfeld's Theater, had actually been sculpting that same identity for Jewish immigrants for decades. Jewish immigrant women played a huge role in the assimilation of their newly arrived families by entering the workplace, doing sewing work, working in factories and sweatshops, or doing piecework, and also by learning new trades that didn't exist in the old country, and developing new notions of autonomy. Their roles within the home and the family also changed as personal responsibilities and traditional roles were reconfigured in the new world. During this time, immigrant women also made up a large segment of the Yiddish theater audience. Sweatshop girls would spend hard-earned pennies for tickets, and the actresses they saw, like Bessie Tomaszewski, served as examples of a successful new life in America. Born in Ukraine, Bessie arrived in America in 1883, attending school for a few years before going to work in a stocking factory. At the age of 14, she went with her parents to the Yiddish theater and saw a young actor by the name of Boris Tomaszewski playing a female role. A few years later, she joined the company and eventually married Boris. She struggled with stage fright at first, but soon became the star of the company, playing some of the same roles that her husband had played before her, and she delighted audiences for over 30 years. Her most famous roles were in plays with strong women's rights themes. In 1915, her husband wrote Die schöne Amerikaner, The Beautiful American, for Bessie, and she shocked and delighted audiences by appearing on stage in this play in a riding costume. Scandalous for the times. Another major presence in the Yiddish theater was Bertha Kalisch, a distinguished actress who performed over 125 roles, eventually performing in more than 7 languages, and who became the first actress to make the transition from Yiddish theater to mainstream American drama in both the stage, film, radio, and on stage. She studied at the Lemberg Conservatory before joining the chorus of a local Polish theater at age 13, and quickly became the star of a Yiddish theater performing in Budapest and Romania. She moved to the United States in 1894 and starred in a series of new plays with various Yiddish companies. In 1901, she followed Sarah Bernhardt's example and performed the title role in Hamlet, but she did it in Yiddish. It wasn't until 1905 that she performed in her first English language role in the play Fedora, but she continued to perform in both Yiddish and English roles, as well as in French and Polish and many other languages, until her retirement in 1931. Often referred to, excuse me, I skipped one. Oh, no, I didn't. This is now Celia Adler, forgive me. Often referred to as the First Lady of Yiddish theater, Celia Adler was born to a family of actors. Her father was the famed Jacob Adler, who was one of the mainstays of the New York Yiddish theater scene. Celia was acting by the age of 4, and in 1918 she joined the Yiddish Art Theater, but left a year later to join forces with other actors and create a new theater called the Jewish Art Theater. Inspired by the Moscow Art Theater that Stanislavski had created in Russia, and encouraged by the new trend to realism in drama, they developed a small repertoire of plays with characters that were much more fully realized than in some of the Yiddish melodramas. They adopted a single Yiddish dialect to be used consistently, and appointed a literary artistic committee to choose the plays that they would perform. As a result, their troupe was hailed by the Theater magazine as one of the high artistic points of Yiddish theater accomplishment. Adler continued to perform both serious and melodramatic roles on stage and screen until her retirement in 1948. Now, Molly Picon. This was something that I learned in doing the research for this evening. I had seen Molly Picon in multiple things, many films, and of course in Fiddler on the Roof as Yenta, and assumed that she had emigrated to America from Europe. But in fact, Molly Picon was born in New York City. And she was a child star in vaudeville long before she ever appeared with the Yiddish theater companies that she would later join. She was a child star with impish charm, who soon was known as the sweetheart of Second Avenue. Eventually, she did join a Yiddish theater company and married the company's main playwright, Jacob Kalisch. Together, they toured Europe, performing all over for more than a year. And the reason that they decided to go on tour was so that Molly Picon could perfect her Yiddish. After returning to the United States, she starred in more than 200 Yiddish productions, performing comic renditions of The Working Goyle and The Story of Grandma's Shawl. As Yiddish theater declined in New York City, she accepted more mainstream stage and film roles. She played an American widow searching for a husband in Israel in the Broadway musical Milk and Honey, written by Jerry Herman. And her Hollywood film credits include Come Blow Your Horn with Frank Sinatra and, of course, Fiddler on the Roof. Now, what follows is a film clip from one of her early Yiddish films that really demonstrates how charming a performer she was. We'll just watch a little snippet of it. Actually, it's only 2 minutes long. Maybe we'll watch the whole thing.
Die Hauptsache noch etwas zu bitten, Kaffchen. Zerreißt das Gesindere.
Slimmy, was heißt denn das nicht, die kleine Fabrik, die will's nicht. So schön in Gas. Na, und das hat wohl geraschen, was du so kalten Zickerlach. Nu geh schon raus.
Dir meine Schier, Haschirin, mit Liebe ich Bazirin, dir meine Schume mein. Ich sing, dir meine Chaläumes, mein Liebe dir Träume,
as she runs up the stairs and she does that kind of little crazy leg run, there was this childlike quality to her in her performances, and she was known for doing somersaults. Later on, near the end of her life, she appeared in a regional theater production of Hello, Dolly as the title character, and it was said that at the curtain call she would make her, even though she was well into her 80s at the time, she would make her entrance by doing a somersault and then standing up to take her bow. So that youthful exuberance stayed with her throughout her life. In the late 19th and early 20th century, hold on for a moment there. We want to go back. My mouse is kind of skipping over things. Forgive me. In the late 19th and early 20th century, some of the women who appeared in Yiddish theater and on vaudeville stages came to represent the promises of the American dream. They were very modern, but at the same time, they connected back to the old country and its lost traditions. As a result, vaudeville bills were full of Jewish women whose onstage personas represented the divided attachments of the immigrants in the audience to both the new and the old world. And one song that represented that really well is Irving Berlin's 1909 song, Sadie Salome. And we'll listen to a little bit of that now.
Sadie Cohn left her happy home to become an actress lady. On the stage she soon became the rage as the only real Salome baby. When she came to town, her sweetheart Mose brought for her a round of pretty rose. But he got an awful fright when his Sadie came to sight. He stood up and yelled with all his might, "Don't do that dance, I tell you, Sadie. That's not the business for a lady. Most everybody knows that I'm your loving most. Oi, 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 vanish your clothes. You better go and get your dresses. Everyone's got the upper glasses. Oh, it's such a sad disgrace. No one looks in your face. Sadie, so long, go home."
And I'm going to pause it there. It really kind of captures the idea of this modern girl getting up on stage and performing the Dance of the Seven Veils while her shocked family and friends in the audience are enticing her to go home. Female vaudeville performers who were recent immigrants themselves or the children of immigrants often found the stage to be one of the few places where they could act out their feelings about assimilation and their assigned roles as women. But the old world was never very far away, and it was evoked almost nightly on the vaudeville stage somewhere in America by the song My Yiddish Mama in Sophie Tucker's act. Now, known for her powerful vocal delivery, Tucker was one of the most popular entertainers in the United States during the first half of the 20th century. She was known by the nickname the last of the Red Hot Mamas, and as such, on a typical night, she would usually follow her rendition of My Yiddish Mama, reconnecting to the old world, with a bawdy song such as You've Got to See Mama Every Night, connecting into this new liberated image of women. Tucker was born to a Jewish family in what is now part of Ukraine, and the family immigrated in 1887 to Boston before moving to Connecticut, where at a very young age she began singing at her parents' restaurant for tips. In 1903, she married a man named Louis Tuck, from whom she later derived her stage name. However, she soon left him to pursue a singing career in New York, where she made her first professional appearance in an amateur vaudeville night. Early on, producers thought that audiences wouldn't accept Tucker because she was not a traditional beauty and was what we would call today plus size, or as my grandmother would say, zoftig. But Tucker saw this as an opportunity and introduced songs like Nobody Loves a Fat Girl, but Oh, How a Fat Girl Can Love. And if I could have found a clip of that one to play, I would have done it, and it would have gone into my next show. Tucker continued to perform for her entire life, appearing at the Latin Quarter nightclub just a few weeks before she died. She was unstoppable, and her style influenced generations of female entertainers like Belle Barth, Toady Fields, Cass Elliot from the Mamas and the Papas, and of course Bette Midler, who frequently evokes Tucker as a character in her concert performances with a series of dirty jokes. Tucker's greatest recording success was undoubtedly My Yiddish Mama, a song that synthesized her embracing of a brash American persona with a nostalgia for the old country. It was, surprisingly, covered by other singers over the years, including Tom Jones, Jackie Wilson, Charles Aznavour, and Neil Sedaka, to name a few. We'll listen now to a little bit of Tucker's original recording. And I'm going to stop it there again for the interest of time, because I want to move on to some of the women behind the scenes. Women who could be seen as stereotypical Jewish mothers, but who in fact were powerful businesswomen who shaped their own lives as well as the lives of those around them. Minnie Marks was the mother and manager of the Marx Brothers, and also the sister of comedian and vaudeville star Al Sheehan. She was born Minnie Schoenberg in Durham, Germany, to performing parents who were popular performers in the local Jewish community. Her mother, in fact, was a yodeling harpist, and her father was a ventriloquist. They immigrated to New York in 1880, where Minnie eventually met and married Samuel Marks. In later years, all of her sons confirmed that Minnie had been the head of the family and the only person who could really keep them in order. She was also the driving force in their career, launching them in vaudeville. She was a hard bargainer with theater managers and had a keen mind for the business side of show business. In fact, while managing the Marx Brothers, she used the name of Minnie Palmer so that booking agents would not know that the person they were dealing with was the mother of the foursome. Always devoted to her sons, Minnie lived just long enough to see their 1929 film debut in The Coconuts, but died later that year. Gertrude Berg, another very savvy businesswoman, was born Tilly Edelstein in 1899 in New York City. She was the daughter of a Russian immigrant mother and a British father who ran a resort in the Catskill Mountains, and it was at this resort that Gertrude had her first experience as a performer. Later, at the age of 20, she married Louis Berg, and they had 2 children. When Louis lost his job, Gertrude wrote a skit called The Goldbergs, about a Jewish family living in a Bronx tenement. Very autobiographical. She took the handwritten pages to NBC Studios and somehow got an appointment with an executive. But when he couldn't read her writing, she read the script to him. Her performance not only sold the radio program, but also got Berg the job as the leading actress. She continued to write the show's scripts by hand for as long as the program remained on the air. Early episodes showed the Goldbergs struggling to adapt to American life, a by now familiar subject for many. And the show became a gathering place for families and a way to tie together old and new concerns. Eventually, Berg also wrote episodes that saw the fictional family moving to Connecticut as a symbol of upward mobility in the 1940s. She always included Jewish religious and cultural celebrations in her episodes, such as the Seder and Yom Kippur, with the intention of drawing even larger audiences and introducing the daily practices of Jewish life to those who had not experienced them. She became inextricably identified as Molly Goldberg. And when the series was bought by CBS and moved to television in 1949, she went on to win the first ever Emmy Award as the lead actress in a series. The show was eventually canceled in 1956, but Berg went on to make guest appearances on television until her death 10 years later. Throughout her life, she was active in various Jewish causes. Along with Sophie Tucker, who was a good friend, and playwright Lillian Hellman, they worked together to secure the safety of Jewish war orphans during World War II. Now, this was a find in my research here. This is a trailer for a documentary about Gertrude Berg, and it gives you just a glimpse of the influence that she had and the impact that the Goldberg family and their show, their characters, had on American society.
From the Peabody Award-winning director of The Life and Times of Hank Greenberg comes...
Hello. I don't know. Hello is such a little word for such a big feeling. I want to say hello to you with all the letters in the alphabet. That would be a hello. Anyway, hello.
Before Martha, before Oprah, there was Gertrude Berg, creator and star of The Goldbergs.
Gertrude Berg invented the sitcom and wrote it.
Don't forget, David, darling, marriage is just not an express train where you get on the first station and you get off the last station. Don't forget, David, darling, there are local stops in between.
Gertrude Berg is the most famous woman in America you never heard of.
She was no shrinking violet.
The press dubbed Gertrude Berg the First Lady of Radio.
Well, now, you're one of the few people I have ever known who both write and act. Which do you prefer?
Act. When you live with a character as long as I've lived with Molly, it gets a little confusing. I'm really Molly more hours through the day than I am Gertrude Berg.
When Molly started selling things, it was pioneering in every way.
With a little boiling water and no coffee pots to wash. 1, 2, 3, you have a delicious cup of Sanko coffee.
You remembered it, and you shopped.
Gertrude Berg was the first Best Actress Emmy winner and a Tony Award winner.
Everybody loved Molly Goldberg. Didn't matter if you were a Catholic nun or a Jewish person.
Leave the matzah crumpets. Also the matzah scones.
You didn't think about religion or even ethnicity. Listening to Molly Goldberg, you thought about families.
So that just gives us a glimpse of the impact that this program had on society. Gertrude Berg, as a writer and as a producer, set an example for many female writers and producers. So I'm going to take a look now at a few Jewish American playwrights, female playwrights, whose work was either inspired or at least reflected hers. Hellman, as I mentioned earlier, was friends with Gertrude Berg and worked together on many causes with her. Lillian Hellman took her social consciousness into her writing, into her work, writing dramas that forcefully attacked injustice. She attended New York Public Schools and New York University and began writing plays in the 1930s, with her dramas sharply aimed at exposing various forms in which evil appears. Her literary skill, however, kept her characters from becoming merely social mouthpieces for her own views. Her believable dialogue created very real characters, well-rounded, well-drawn characters, and a realistic intensity matched by few of her contemporary playwrights. Her collected plays, many of which continue to be performed today, were published in 1972. Sylvia Fine was born in Brooklyn and began writing song parodies at Brooklyn College. An accomplished pianist, she was hired to play rehearsals for producer Max Liebman when Catskill comic Danny Kaye auditioned for one of his shows. Though they were raised in the same neighborhood, they had never met, but they married when the show closed. In all, Fine would go on to write over 100 songs for Danny Kaye, including the music for the films The Secret Life of Walter Mitty and The Inspector General. She also produced, wrote, and narrated a PBS special called Musical Comedy Tonight and taught musical theater at Yale. In general, Fine's relationship to Judaism was somewhat more social than religious, as exemplified in her being a founding member of the Palm Springs Tamarask Country Club when she discovered that other clubs in the area were restricted. She was also an avid supporter of the State of Israel, receiving the Pillars of Hope Award for her work in that regard. The Gilbert and Sullivan-like pattern that she created for Kaye still influences today's songwriters. Their partnership created something unique, as we'll see in this example, with Jewish inflections and tonality placed central in a mainstream Hollywood film and rapid-fire delivery that would be worthy of Lin-Manuel Miranda. I'm going to fast forward a little bit here to get to the main part of the song.
Anybody in the... I am prepared to make a statement. When I was a lad, I was gloomy and sad as I was from the day I was born. When other babes giggled and gurgled and wiggled, I proudly was loudly forlorn. My friends and my family looked at me clammily, thought there was something amiss. When others found various antics hilarious, all I could manage was this. Oh, this, oh, this, oh, this. My father, he shouted, he needs to be clouded, his teeth on a wreath I'll hand him. My mother, she cried as she rushed to my side, you're a brute and you don't understand him. So they sent for a witch with a terrible twitch to ask how my future impressed her. She took one look at me and cried, What else could he be but a jester? A jester?
And I'm going to stop it there, but it gives you just a little glimpse, that rapid-fire dialogue that Kaye was so adept at, but was really created by Sylvia Fine.
A jester?
And here we go. Oh, sticking again. There we go. Now we're on to Betty Comden. Betty Comden, much like Sylvia Fine, was a lyricist, part of the team of Comden and Green. She was born Bashia Cohen in Brooklyn in 1917, the second of two children in a comfortable middle-class Jewish family. Her parents were both Russian immigrants who kept a kosher home. But in her autobiography many years later, Comden admitted that while her childhood was informed by her parents' Jewish religion and faith, she herself was always conflicted about her Jewish identity. Teased about her name by neighborhood children, she actually began calling herself Betty at the age of 5, and later had her name legally changed from Cohen to Comden. Despite this inner conflict, her career in theater actually began, and this is fascinating, when she played the lead role in Leah the Forsaken at the Progressive Brooklyn Ethical Culture School. Now, this is significant not only because it gives Comden her first stage experience, but because it is this very important play in the image of Jewish women on stage. And it relates to the dichotomy that Comden herself would create in many of her later lyrics and librettos for musicals. That between the clever or comic Jewish girl, the second banana, and the Gentile leading lady. The best example that I can give you of this, if you know the show On the Town, is the leading lady, Miss Turnstile's Ivy Smith, and the very Jewish roommate with a head cold, Lucy Schmealer. In almost everything that Betty Comden wrote, there were these two opposing images of women. After attending NYU, she met Adolph Green in a review in Greenwich Village, and it didn't take long for them to move quickly up the ranks in New York theater. In 1944, while still in their 20s, they collaborated with Leonard Bernstein to write On the Town, and teamed up again with Bernstein for Wonderful Town in 1952, the same year that they wrote the screenplay for a little movie called Singing in the Rain. Comden's best work, however, was always about New York, and she portrayed the city with great affection. Her female characters are also New Yorkers, her best female characters. They are fast-talking, humorous, confident, smart women who triumph over dumb starlets and narrow-minded debutantes. Comden remains one of the most important librettists in musical theater history, contributing a wit informed by her Jewish upbringing, her New Yorkness, and her implicit belief that women need to assert themselves creatively. Similarly, Wendy Wasserstein was a playwright of New York City. She was born in Brooklyn and unfortunately died at the very young age of 56. But in between, she left us volumes of plays and essays that probe with humor and a unique New York sensibility the predicament facing educated women who came of age in the second half of the 20th century. Her drama, The Heidi Chronicles, was awarded both a Pulitzer and a Tony Award. Her first play, Any Woman Can't, is a cutting farce on one of her major themes, a woman's attempt to succeed in an environment dominated by men. She also wrote several collections of essays, including one of my favorite titles ever, Shiksagadis, or How I Spent My 40s. Paula Vogel is the Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright of Indecent and How I Learned to Drive, currently enjoying a revival on Broadway. Her plays have been produced primarily in regional theater until Indecent made its debut about 5 years ago. But she was a well-known playwright with productions at the Vineyard Theater, Roundabout, Circle Repertory, and of course at Yale, where she taught playwriting for many years. She was born in Washington, D.C. to a Jewish father and Roman Catholic mother, and her personal relationship to her Jewishness was one that emerged over time. In fact, while she was working on Indecent, she made the conscious decision to go back and study and to prepare for a bat mitzvah. She never went through with the final ceremony, but she did actually study. And I haven't found that this was published anywhere. I know this because I had the good fortune of working on a production of Indecent last November at Kane University. And I happened to mention it in conversation with a friend of mine who is a cantor at a synagogue in Rhode Island, in Providence, Rhode Island. And my friend Judy, the cantor, said to me, "Do you want to talk to Paula? Because she's a friend of mine." And I thought, how on earth do you know Paula Vogel? This is amazing. And it turns out that while she was writing the play, she was in Providence, Rhode Island, working on another project with Trinity Repertory Theater there. And she went to my friend's congregation to do this study, working with my friend Judy and the rabbi at that synagogue, to kind of reacquaint herself and prepare herself for her immersion into the world of Indecent. I'll also say that she was lovely, and I was able to connect with her. She sent a lovely note to the cast at Kane on their opening night. Which
oh yeah, a lot of women got off of this to this.
Okay. All right, I'll just keep going. Indecent is an incredible piece of theater. It tells the story of another play, The God of Vengeance, written by Sholem Asch, and it deals with anti-Semitism, sexism, sex trafficking, and same-sex relationships. One would think that this was not the subject matter that would be popular in the early part of the 20th century, but in fact, the play was a huge hit in Europe, and it toured throughout the various countries of Europe, performed in Yiddish, and was a huge hit. It was translated into English in 1923 and eventually produced on Broadway. Here, however, in New York, it was shut down and the actors were arrested and charged with violating obscenity laws. Afterwards, the acting company, who had come to New York for this production, returned to Europe, dismayed and heartbroken, and many of them then perished in the Holocaust. It's a sad tale of this play that just has so much to say about art, about theater as a community, about life and expression, and love, ultimately about love. And this is a little peek, a little trailer from the Broadway production.
We have a story we want to tell you about a play that changed my life.
Of all the boys I've known, and I've known some, until I first met you, I was lonesome. And then you came in sight, and my heart grew light, and this whole world seemed new to me.
You're really swell, I have to admit you deserve expressions that really fit you. And so I racked my brain, hoping to explain all the things that you do to me.
By me, this is shame. Please help me explain. By me, this is shame means that's so grand. By me, this ain't it oyster man.
Another Jewish woman working in the contemporary theater as a playwright is Tony Award-winning lyricist and librettist Lynn Ahrens. A native New Yorker, she began her career when she became one of the principal songwriters and singers for the renowned television series Schoolhouse Rock. Conjunction Junction, What's Your Function? You may remember hearing that one. Since then, she has written extensively for the theater, winning Tony Awards, Drama Desk Awards, and Outer Critics Circle Awards. With her longtime collaborator, composer Stephen Flaherty, many of her Broadway, Off-Broadway, and Lincoln Center Theater credits include Once on This Island, My Favorite Year, Lucky Stiff, A Man of No Importance, Desirose, The Glorious Ones, and Seussical. Ragtime was kind of their first major collaboration and first major success. It was revived on Broadway in 2010, and I'm going to show you just a little bit of the opening number of Ragtime. I wish we had time to see the whole thing, because it is a synthesis of what was happening in America at the beginning of the 20th century. it shows us the white American family from Connecticut. It shows us the African Americans who were making their way to the inner cities in the Great Migration. And it shows us the impact of Jewish immigrants on those very same cities. And it also, the entire show obviously, deals specifically with the changing role of women. So this is introduced by Harvey Fierstein here, a little glimpse. I'm going to try to skip over his introduction because it's quite lengthy. A little glimpse at the opening of Ragtime.
Laid out.
In 1902, Father built a house at the crest of the Broadview Avenue Hill in New Rochelle, New York. And it seemed for some years thereafter that all the family's days would be warm and fair.
The skies were blue and hazy, rarely a storm, rarely a chill. La, 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 la. The afternoons were lazy, everyone warm, everything still. La, 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 la.
So I'm going to stop there for just a second. This is obviously one segment that I was talking about of the population, the family, as they're called, and the characters don't even have names. It's mother and father, that represents kind of white America. And I'm going to go a little bit further here. And now we have the introduction of the Negro, or the African American ensemble.
Music that was theirs and no one else's. The sound of changing times. The music of a better day.
Listen to the ragtime. Ladies with parasols, fellows with tennis balls. There were no Negroes and there were no immigrants.
And now we have the introduction of the immigrants.
They came from Western and Eastern Europe by the thousands. No dream was too big. They would be the next J.P. Morgan, Evelyn Nesbit, or Henry Ford. It would be their century too. It was only 1906.
And there were 94 years to go. And there was music playing, catching a nation in its pride. Baker and billionaire, everyone everywhere, moving to the ragtime.
I'm going to stop it again just for one more second. This next section of choreography it's a brilliant theatrical realization of the conflict between these three groups. And I'm going to stop it there. If you have not seen Ragtime, it's such a lovely adaptation of the E.L. Doctorow book that Lynn Ahrens and her collaborators have created and given to us. It's quite a beautiful show. As we talk about Broadway, we have to talk about the fact that it is a commercial enterprise. And many of the artists we've seen this evening would not be possible, many of the artistic expressions would not be possible without the people who raise the money and produce the shows. One of the most influential partnerships in theater producing today is the husband and wife team of Barry and Fran Weisler. Born in 1928, Fran Weisler met her husband when they were both attached to a touring production that was traveling around New Jersey. And shortly after that, after they were married, they began the National Theater Company, which presented classic plays at high schools. So it would be Shakespeare and even ancient Greek plays at high schools and colleges around the country. After years of touring, they brought their productions of Othello and Medea to Broadway in 1982. And those two plays earned them their first 2 Tony Award nominations. Since then, they have earned 28 Tony and Drama Desk nominations, which is a record. They have won 7 Tonys and an Olivier Award for their production of Chicago in London's West End. Their impact on the theater, Fran Weisler's impact on the theater, is huge. Chicago, which is still running, the revival of Chicago, was done as an encore production. It was the Weislers who said, let's bring that back to Broadway where it is still running and entertaining people. They are the true power brokers of the current Broadway scene. I'm going to talk very quickly, as I know we're getting close to our time here, about a couple of actresses that I wanted to mention. Tove Felsche is a very, very versatile actress who actually holds the record for the longest running one-woman show on Broadway with her starring role in Golda's Balcony about Prime Minister Golda Meir. She debuted on Broadway in 1973 opposite Christopher Plummer in a production of Cyrano. And that same year began her television appearances, which have continued throughout. Among her many theater roles, she performed the title role of Yentl, both on and off Broadway, several years before Barbra Streisand brought the story to the screen. She has balanced her active career on stage with scores of film and television roles, including Kissing Jessica Stein and a recurring character called Danielle Melnick on Law and Order. But can you call yourself a New York actor if you haven't been on Law and Order? She has also appeared in The Walking Dead on television and most recently in the comedy drama series Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. And I love this quote from her. "Some people have called me the Meryl Streep of Jewish actresses. I think that's flattering, but then I just go back to work." She is a journeyman actor who just continues to put out quality performances. And of course, then there is the icon that is Bette Midler, known over all facets of show business, receiving Grammy Awards, 2 Academy Award nominations, 2 Tony Awards, Golden Globe Awards, and last December receiving the Kennedy Center Honors for Lifetime Artistic Achievement. She began her legendary career in 1965, first as one of the daughters, a replacement in the Broadway company of Fiddler on the Roof. And then, of course, came her legendary show at the Continental Baths, a gay bathhouse in Greenwich Village, where she developed her iconic personality and the trademark act that would make her famous. She was actually born in Honolulu, where her family was one of the few Jewish families in a mostly Asian neighborhood. And according to Midler, she grew up culturally, if not religiously, Jewish. And she recently said in an interview, "I always knew who I was, and being Jewish was definitely a big part of that. My parents loved Jewish humor, and I remember one of the thrills for my parents, because they had so little contact in Hawaii with anything Jewish, was to see Myron Cohen on television on The Ed Sullivan Show." Of course, what is there to say that hasn't been said about Barbra Streisand, one of the greatest performers of the 20th and 21st centuries? But in addition to her performance skill and her legendary performances, she has blazed new trails for women in Hollywood as a producer and a director. One of the things about Streisand is that from her earliest performances, she had a confidence and a total understanding of who she was, from her appearance to her sense of style, to her mannerisms, and of course that voice. One of the interesting things is that she has really never played a non-Jewish character. And she has been, throughout her on-screen performances, defiantly Jewish. In fact, having great control over her projects, she has insisted that many of the roles she played, even if they weren't written for a Jewish woman, were rewritten to accommodate that. Obviously, Dolly Gallagher-Levi, and I'll talk about that in just a second, because Tove and Bette and Barbara have that all in common. But of course, the yeshiva boy who was really a girl in Yentl, the Jewish psychiatrist in The Prince of Tides, and she even rewrote the lead role in A Star is Born to be a Jewish singer-songwriter. Before Streisand, conventional wisdom stated that actors who looked too Jewish were relegated to supporting roles. But now, over half a century after her debut, looking Jewish, ethnic, or in any way different has become chic, and Streisand is part of the reason for that. But for her, Jewishness is not a role or a trend, but a truth. She has often spoken of being proud to be Jewish and has been very generous to Jewish causes and philanthropies throughout the world. Now, I mentioned Hello, Dolly, and I chose pictures of each of these three actresses in that role specifically because they each chose to focus on something quite different. The character's full name is Dolly Gallagher Levi, a wonderful emblem of the melting pot of late 19th century New York City. Dolly is an old-fashioned name, Gallagher is Irish, and Levi is Jewish. Streisand's Dolly in the movie is definitely Jewish. Bette Midler in the recent revival was an amalgam. There were moments of Jewish inflection in her dialogue, but there was a little Irish gait in her walk and in her footwork and some of the dance numbers. Tova Feldsha, interestingly enough, when she played the role at Paper Mill Playhouse, decided to play it Irish, and she played it with a full-out Irish brogue because Dolly Gallagher was her maiden name, and she felt that she had immigrated as a young girl, grown up in New York, and still had that Irish brogue. So it's just an interesting to see how these three very Jewish actresses had a different take on this role. A quick look in the last few minutes here of the next generation of Jewish women who are poised to move theater forward. First, a few producer. Mara Isaacs has produced over 150 productions on Broadway, off-Broadway, and at theaters and performing arts centers around the world. Her biggest success to date has been Hadestown, which is still playing to sold-out houses. Sonia Friedman's production company is based in London, but has initiated and produced more than 160 productions all over the world. And the company has won numerous Olivier and Tony Awards, including awards for the record-breaking 9 Olivier Awards for Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which is still playing to sold-out audiences on Broadway. As for writers, one of the most interesting and most prolific composers currently working on Broadway is Jeanine Tesori. She started out, like Sylvia Fine, as an accompanist, but she has now received more awards than any other female composer in the history of musical theater. These are three of her many successes, and she has also recently composed her first opera. And now for a few performers of note in the current scene. Idina Menzel is, of course, best known for her role as Maureen in Rent, Elphaba in Wicked, and as the voice of Elsa in Frozen. The descendant of Russian immigrant grandparents, she started performing in synagogues as a bar mitzvah and wedding singer at age 15, and continued playing those gigs while attending New York University's Tisch School of the Arts before embarking on a professional career. Shoshona Bean, in the center, was born in Olympia, Washington, the only child of a Jewish family. She studied musical theater at Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music, and shortly after moving to New York, was cast in the off-Broadway revival of Godspell. Following in the footsteps of Barbra Streisand, she has played Fanny Brice in Funny Girl at North Shore Dinner Theater near Boston, and following in the footsteps of Bette Midler, she originated the role of Cece Bloom in the pre-Broadway run of the musical production of Beaches, one of Bette Midler's most popular films. And while not a household name, theater audiences have known Jackie Hoffman for years, on the right here, as an outstanding character actress. She appeared in The Addams Family on Broadway and as Princess Winifred in Once Upon a Mattress off-Broadway. Hoffman was most recently seen on stage in the critically acclaimed Yiddish production of Fiddler on the Roof, presented by the National Yiddish Theater Volksbein. In a New York Times interview, Hoffman observed, "Yiddish was always part of my zeitgeist, but immersing myself in the language has been a wonderful discovery and a connection to my history and my family. It is a very powerful language, pure and honest, and it takes us back to where we started. And so too, we are back to where we started with a 20th century Yenta, played by Jackie Hoffman, and Yiddish theater that still exists with the Yiddish Theater Folksbein, with one foot still in the old world and yet an eye on the future. I hope that this look at the many contributions of Jewish women on and off the stage has provided you with a few insights and will perhaps lead you on to further discoveries of your own. Thank you so much for having me with you this evening.
Oh, yeah, and thanks, Susan, for that amazing and very insightful production that you did. And I wanted to open the floor to any questions that people might have about some of the characters that were featured or about some of the shows that were featured. So you can either put a question in the chat, or if you're brave, raise your hand. Okay. So if anybody has anything they'd like to ask, this is your moment. Okay.
I just want to say, it's not really a question. Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely.
My sister was on here before, Susan, and she knows you from Kane University, Lauren Jade Green.
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
It is a small world, right?
Yeah, she had to get off, but
Oh.
she was really happy to be on here. And I'll just say your presentation was so
Oh,
thorough
thank
and
you.
fantastic.
Thank you. And please give Lauren my best. Give her my regards.
I will.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for beautiful, beautiful presentation that brought back many memories from my grandparents' record player of putting, especially Bamir Bistushen and some others, which was really a beautiful experience here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And Susan, I wanted to ask how it was working with the students at Kane University, who are, I guess, very diverse population and so on Indecent, like how they responded and how they, I guess, approached it, or what it, meaningful it was for them.
Oh, it's a wonderful question. When the chair of the department, Holly Logue, who also directed the production, asked me to come in and work with her on the movement transitions. There's songs and musical sequences spattered throughout the play, and it's a large show with a lot going on. And she said, "Can you come in and stage those sections and then kind of be my second pair of eyes with the rest of the production?" Which I was happy to do. And when I started thinking about doing Indecent, doing this play that I had seen on Broadway and had been so moved by, but doing it with a cast that was largely made up of Hispanic and African American students. In fact, I believe there were only 2 out of 24 in the cast, 2 students who were Jewish.
Right, I know one of them. Yeah.
Oh.
Right? Yeah.
That's right. And it was, they of course brought their own experiences to the rehearsal process. But what was so fascinating was watching these young actors embrace this story. Now, issues of gender fluidity or same-sex relationships is something they related to immediately in our world. So that was not the issue. But they all were able to see a parallel to their own families' experiences, whether that it was an immigrant experience or an experience between a father and a daughter, which is one of the other major relationships in Indecent. And they embraced it completely. They worked like mad. They worked their tuchus off to learn Yiddish, and they were absolutely so committed to telling this story. They developed accents. They would switch because they all played multiple characters, and they had to switch from using a Yiddish accent to being a New Yorker or to being from somewhere else, going back and forth. And it was really quite phenomenal to be a part of that and to watch them embrace this story. It gives one hope. I mean, the theater of the community of theater gives us the opportunity to embrace differences in a way that I think is so important. And I thought that again as we watched the little snippet of Ragtime. As I watched it this time, I thought about the people, the actors in that production, who were probably, I've also done a production of Ragtime and had this experience with Ragtime also, where it transforms your relationship to people who are different than you. It allows you to experience it side by side with them in a very, very profound way that I don't know if anything else really does that, which is why I think the arts, theater in particular, are so important. But it was really wonderful to do it with the students. It was a beautiful production. I was very proud of it and proud of them especially. So great.
Agreed, right? Ditto on that. And some things in the chat about amazing presentation.
Thank you.
Over the years, I've seen you in many productions at the Forum Theater, Plays in the Park. You've always brought something special to your roles. Here's somebody I saw Ragtime at SOPAC years ago. It was
that's where I did it. Yeah.
And another comment, I enjoyed learning so much and especially loved the clips and information you shared about the women's background and Jewish history.
Right.
And I think there was a hand raised, possibly. I don't know if someone had another question.
Somebody, yeah, I thought I saw someone.
Yeah, but maybe they are. Oh, what are the chances Indecent or Ragtime will be produced on or off Broadway? I guess again.
I don't know if professionally there are. I haven't heard of any plans for any revivals of them. Not that I'm aware of. I know Indecent opened in London back last fall, actually at the same time the Kane production was running here. And Kane was actually the first college in America to produce the show, which was quite something for us too. So that was exciting. I have not heard of any. Certainly, I think they both have much to say to audiences today in our world. They're both also big shows that are very expensive. And if you looked at Broadway ticket prices anytime recently, you'll see that they, like gas prices, are skyrocketing. I was saying to someone just this morning, I thought that I might want to go see Daniel Craig in Macbeth in the Scottish play. And I thought, well, you know, I'm only 4'10", so I like to sit in the first row of the mezzanine so I can get a big overview and see, you know, right in the center, and no one can sit in front of me. And I looked at the ticket prices, and it was well over $400 a seat.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I'll watch the Denzel Washington version again. You know, I can see other productions. I'll go to the Shakespeare Theater, wonderful Shakespeare Theater here in New Jersey, and see their work instead. I think Broadway is at a real crossroads right now. It's going to price itself out of things. I understand the reason for the high prices, but I'm worried about its future as an artistic achievement. It will continue, and it will have more shows based on movies, and it will become kind of a theme park atmosphere, perhaps. Yeah. But the artistry of what was once done, not just on Broadway, but in the Yiddish theater, in off-Broadway theaters, in fringe theaters in New York, it is that artistry is lost in the commercialism of current Broadway, unfortunately. So Ragtime, I think, would be very expensive to produce these
maybe
days.
Paper Mill. Maybe that's
Paper Mill did they did do Ragtime a number of years ago, yeah. And it was actually a scaled down version, which actually worked quite well. It was a little less big than the original Broadway production, but it was a lovely production. Yeah, really nice. I don't know, they've released their season. I haven't seen it for this year, for next year rather. But
right. But what you said about it pricing itself out, unfortunately, is a very valid point. But I mean, I think there are still ways that there's lots of discount tickets to get, but you have to go. What it is the early bird catches the discount.
Right.
You know what time
You have to go to the show the minute they announce it.
Absolutely.
The minute it starts. I did that with Hamilton. It worked.
Yes, that's how the first time I saw Hamilton, the minute they announced that it was moving to Broadway, I went on, and I think I paid $40 for the first
Yeah.
time I saw it. Paid more the second time, but it was worth it.
And it says here, high school productions, these are phenomenal and another outlet.
Absolutely. I started the Rising Star Awards at Paper Mill for the production of high school musicals to kind of encourage people. Even for someone who doesn't go on into theater, and most participants in their high school musicals don't go on into theater. They go on into other walks of life, but it is a seminal experience. It creates that unity. It gives kids a focus and a purpose, and keeps them off the streets. And yeah, absolutely. I think I remember a production of Ragtime at Hoboken High School. And actually, oh my gosh, I just remembered this. A production of Fiddler on the Roof at Hoboken High School with an African American Tevye. And I went to see it as part of the Rising Stars, as one of the evaluators, to write up a report about this show. And I thought, oh, okay, all right, let's see what they do with this. By the end of, not even the end of the first act, halfway through the first act, I was so convinced that boy on stage, that African-American boy, lived on a pogrom, had 5 daughters. It was the most beautiful realization. These themes are universal in so many of these shows. One of the things about great theater is that the more specific the story, the more universal it becomes. Hamlet, if you think about Hamlet for a minute, it is an incredibly specific story about a prince whose father was murdered by his uncle. That doesn't happen to everybody. But we've all had disagreements with our parents. We've all had moments of indecision. We've all had great moments of doubt, which is what Hamlet is all about. For himself, his character is fueled by his indecision and his doubt, and his grief. We've all had grief over losing a parent. All of those things are incredibly universal. So the more specific a story, the more we can all relate to it. And I think that's so true of Fiddler, because it just, gives us that very specific story of a father wanting the best for his children and struggling to maintain his hold on his life and his traditions. It's a brilliant, brilliant piece of theater. Absolutely.
Right. Okay. Are there any more questions or comments for Susan?
Teresa, would I think? I was fascinated by the black and white film clips that show the icons, what they were, the history of the theater, and the pictures, the images. It really brought them to life. And I have to thank you for researching for some of these films that most of us wouldn't be able to locate. So I thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure. It is one of the things that I enjoy most. All through my various schooling, I think I'd be a student for life if I could, and not do anything else. If I could sit in a library and research, or on my computer and research, that's great fun. And there's a small group of theater aficionados like myself, and we're all connected on various different Facebook theater scholar groups and things like that. And, we share. So some of those things, I put little messages out saying, hey, I'm looking for some early Molly Picon stuff. Can anybody find it? A lot of the stuff that I did share is available online. You can do a Google search on Google Images, and many of those pictures will come up. Some are things that I found elsewhere and scanned out of books and things like that. And a few of the film clips I got from some archives and libraries. But, a lot of it is out there if you have the patience to look. Yeah, there's some great material.
May I just say something? In 1936, by the way, it was amazing that you said that she was an American. I really thought Molly Picon was a European.
I did
but
too.
In 1936, my father went to Warsaw. He lived. I wasn't born yet, but he was always told the story, and he played a Yiddle mit dem Fiedel, and he always talked about her. He was a dancer, and she had like a whole scene of because for years he talked about the experience he had with her.
With her. Oh, how
Very,
wonderful.
very. I really thought she was.
With Molly Pecan.
I'm shocked that she was an American.
I was too. I remember seeing her in a number of things, and I really thought that she was had been born in Europe, and like so many other of the great Yiddish theater stars, had come here and joined one of the Yiddish theater companies in New York. But she was born in New York City, and
wow,
it took kind of a reverse route
and her Yiddish was perfect.
Yes,
and the singing parts,
right,
fabulous.
Right? Yeah, yeah. Isn't that something? Yeah, she's a great personality. Absolutely.
Just to add my 2 cents, my grandmother's first cousin was Molly Pecan.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
So there you
My
go.
grandmother's maiden name was Pecan.
Was
But my grandmother migrated here when she got married, so she was, let's say, in her 20s or 30s, whatever. But Molly Pecan was her first cousin.
Oh my gosh. Isn't that great?
Wow.
There you go.
And maybe they're the family. Now I have to go look at the records to see if they're the family that vouched for them to come over.
Come over. Oh, maybe.
Right. Maybe they were. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. You never
And she's
know.
buried in the cemetery where my other grandmother is buried, in Forest Hills, Queens.
In Forest Hills, yes.
There's a section of the cemetery which is all artistic people.
Yes.
And that's where she's buried.
I'm going to move my computer around for a minute, so forgive me because I want to grab. My computer right now is propped up on some of my research. This is a wonderful book, Molly Pecan. It's her autobiography. She had someone help her write it, but it's so charming. It's just like her. It's just like her persona on stage. If you get a chance to pick this up, it's a really easy read and great information about her life and her husband, her relationship with him, and it's written as she talked. You really feel like you're having a conversation with her. So it's a nice read.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? If not, we all wanted to say thank you. People have said great presentation. Oh, that's my husband. Very informative and interesting. Thank you for sharing this with us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yes, so thank you again. I know you worked and did all this just for us.
Encore.
So it was a premier performance, and we are just so delighted that you were able to share with us.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Bravo. Just some quick closing remarks. Everyone was here. These are the people who hung out the whole time. Thank you. It was an amazing program. Thank you, Helene and committee, for arranging it. We encourage you to be a part of our programming in the future. And we have meet and greets. And should your sisterhood ever require any assistance, we have consultants available for future board meetings. In August, we have a new sisterhood president training. And if you enjoy being together with lovely women like tonight, we sincerely hope you can join us July 16th to 19th for Sisters Celebrating Sisters Together in Schaumburg, Illinois. Whether you're a delegate or attending virtually, you will experience magic and ruach. We hope you continue your journey with the Garden State region and hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful summer. Good night.
Yes, enjoy everybody.
Yes.
Okay, take